Very good. All right, recording has started. It's Thursday, April 11th, about 10 minutes after 9 or 1300. Welcome everyone. We're going to get started. First on the list is active support for the NetApp Cinder iSCSI fiber channel volumes presented by Sai. Take it away.
Hi all. This is Sai from NetApp, and I'm here to present the feature active support for the NetApp iSCSI and FCP drivers. So basically, this will enable or ensure us to configure the NetApp iSCSI FCP backends in the Cinder clustered environments. And we plan to, we are going to implement two methods, failover and failover completed methods as proposed in the this link, the spec link, which I have shared there. Can you open that? I think this was done a while ago, and I have gone through this. And we have a failover host method for the current driver, and we will be implementing failover and failover completed because we see there is an issue for the replication version 2.1 stuff. So I think every one of us are aware of this, and I have gone through the wonderful or it's like a presentation or a page done by Gorka for the active. Recently, I've gone through. Thank you, Gorka. It gave a lot of high picture to me. Thank you. So this was a high-level feature that we wanted to present. I didn't put much on the Etherpad as I felt this is a straightforward feature to be enabled for us. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, my only question would be less on the replication methods that you're going to add, which, like you say, it's kind of a straightforward if you understand the feature. It's more about, I assume you have gone through the NetApp code and ensured that you don't have race conditions, that you have tested it, and it, like, you're satisfied with how it behaves running in active, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my only question.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
because one thing.
Good.
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. In the past, we have done with the NFS driver, and that time we went through the code, and so this is a gap iSCSI and FCP driver, and we are planning that right now, Gorka.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then you are familiar with testing it and everything. So
yes.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
John, over to you. I think we are done with this topic.
Okay, that was quick.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing is pay attention to the release schedule and the deadlines, because this is a feature. Just the earlier the better, of course.
Sure, Glenn.
And we'll review as quickly as we can, but you know how that works.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, next up is Walt. This is the volume snapshot clone being serialized and creating performance problems.
Hey guys. Yeah, so we've had customers run into this, and I'm struggling to try and find a quick and easy way to fix this. I don't think there is going to be a quick and easy way. I looked in depth as to, into the locking mechanism that we're using to see if I can create some sort of wildcard lock, such that hopefully we would be allowed to create more than one clone operation going on at a time, because that's really what's going on here. Is we have a customer that wants to clone a volume like 60 times, and it takes quite a long time for that to complete because it is a serialized operation because of this lock. And the lock is in place looking at the code as a mechanism to try and prevent the source volume that is being cloned from being deleted. And this is also true for a snapshot too. It's basically the same lock for creating a volume from a snapshot to prevent the snapshot from being deleted while the operation is ongoing. And I find it quite odd that we do this in this way, simply because every other operation that we do in Cinder is managed via the status of the volume that's being operated on, to prevent other actions from being taken on that source volume at the same time. This is the only thing that I can find that I'm aware of where we actually use a shared lock to prevent this instead of updating the status. So therein lies the issue. Is I think the only solution really to fix this that I can think of, and I'm hoping that Gorka will have another magic wand to wave, but the only thing that I can think of to solve this is to update the status of the source volume to prevent that delete from happening. But the problem with that is that there's no reference counting on it. So if we have, say, 10 requests coming in to create a volume from that volume, well, the first one that comes in is going to update the status of that source volume. When do we know to change that status back to either in use or available? And that can only happen after all of the ongoing operations are completed. And I don't see a mechanism currently within Cinder that can do reference counting on the source volume unless we do some magic in the status name or something. That seems like a hack, but anyway, this is a big problem that I'm kind of tasked to solve, and I couldn't think of an easy solution, so that's why I'm bringing it here, because I think the community as a whole could probably benefit from a fix for this. So there's my pitch.
I looked into this in the past, and just like you say, I didn't find a magic wand to wave and say, ooh, I've done this. It's a bit of a pain. And moreover, if you support active-active, because without active-active, it's like, okay, I could just work around it, maybe with two locks, one to access some kind of counter, and the second to actually do the wait. And another alternative I thought is, oh, we could use one of those locks where you can have multiple readers, but the writer needs to wait until there are no readers, that sort of thing. But since we are using a DLM for active-active, that means we would have to add that feature to TOOS, and that becomes a pain in the ass.
Yeah. That's the route that I looked at too, to try and come up with some locking mechanism to just update what we already have in Cinder to enable this to work. And that's when I came up with this idea of possibly like a wildcard lock, which is effectively a reader and a writer lock. But I went down that road and looked at twos, and I'm like, yeah, this is where do you want to put the pain in, basically? And so I didn't have a solution.
Maybe another alternative is two locks, and instead of using a counter, so we can have it distributed, some kind of information in the workers table where you can count actually how many readers there are there. But it's a pain in the ass because the writer that is waiting to delete kind of has to work on a basis of retry. So polling every n seconds or whatever, try again, not great. But I also think that this is not, it would not be a really big deal, because this is not something that usually happens. You don't try to create clone 60 volumes from a source and then try to delete the source at the same time. It's like, So
yeah,
it wouldn't be that big of a deal if it's not performant on the case of the deletion. Like the deletion, it's kind of an active wait or sleep check. Shouldn't be that big of a deal, I think.
Yeah, so taking a small step back, with other operations in Cinder that are prevented because some action is being taken on volume, the API will use return a failure, right? Because you can't take that option, that action on that. So this particular case seems very bizarre to me with respect to how the rest of the API functions in that respect, because if you get a lock and then you call delete, well, you're going to wait an indeterminate amount of time to get a response back correctly or do this polling, and we don't do that anywhere else. So that part is kind of bizarre.
Well, the problem, I think that it is bizarre because we use cloning and create a snapshot and things like that everywhere in the code for backups,
Yeah.
for image cache. So because we
Mhm.
rely so heavily on this feature in operations that the user may not be even aware that are
Right.
using clone, it's when we say, okay, let's be sure that we don't accidentally, the user doesn't try to delete when we are using it. Because if I'm not mistaken, in some transport protocols like iSCSI and Fiber Channel, if you suddenly delete the volume in the backend, the thread or the process would just hang forever.
Mhm.
So because of that, we want to be extra sure. So I would say that whatever solution we come up with, we should try to still be extra sure that deletion cannot happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I know you mentioned the workers table. My experience with it in production is that it's unreliable. We have entries in the workers table that are from back from 2017 that have never been cleaned out. So that would be a problem, obviously, especially if we're relying upon that to say, oh, there's an entry going on, we can't do anything. But how do we know when that's cleaned up properly? If anyway, so that therein lies another can of worms, and that's why I'm raising this to everyone, because this is a problem that needs to get solved, but I don't know how to do it correctly. Really. The only thing that I can come up with off the top of my head is to, and we don't do this anywhere else, is if we changed it such that we updated the status of the source volume and we don't have reference counting, but we could put a reference count in the status itself. I know I don't know how else to do it correctly unless we add a metadata field or an admin metadata field or something that is reliable that we can fetch from the actual volume itself, but we don't do that anywhere else either. I just don't know how else to solve this correctly other than changing the status so that way no one else can do anything to it until it's back to a status that is available to be deleted.
So the issue is, to create a volume, you lock the delete so that nobody else will delete it. But the next one to create finds that the delete is locked out. So maybe what we need to, so it seems it's slightly at the wrong level. I wonder if we could change the create slightly so that when you, although you'd have to know in advance you want to do 6, well, maybe we need a different API call so that you want to do, right, I don't want to clone a volume, I want to clone 50. And then that way the lock happens, we lock the delete out, but then underneath we would be holding that lock in a place where we don't have to reacquire it. And we would do all the 50 volume clones.
The
then
trick
we-
there is that it would have to have the same, usually if they want to launch 60, maybe they want slightly different sizes, different names. And now you start saying, okay, you have to pass me a list with different values, which is also acceptable. I mean, you can say a bulk, we can call it bulk operations.
Yeah.
Like maybe.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
we
do you
don't have
see,
that
Walter?
anywhere else, but yeah.
Are they so like with the 60 clones, is it usually just they want to spawn a shitload of identical machines, so they need
Yeah.
identical.
Pretty much.
So we could have as
And
a first go would just be we support bulk operations, but it's got to be vanilla in the sense it's got to be the same. You can't modify much on the volume create. I don't know.
To be honest, that sounds like a lot more work
Yeah.
than creating a custom lock that that handles the single writer, multiple readers situation, because you have new API, new operation, changes in a scheduler. It has the benefit that maybe in some backends, this is something that can be efficiently done. I remember in the past, I don't know if who brought up the case of people want to create 20 volumes simultaneously. And I have a way to efficiently do it in the backend. But if you do it one by one, it is super efficient. Our customers are not happy with that. It was just that it was slow. So kind of like starting is slow, but the operation in itself is fast. So they wanted to group them together when there was a spike in number of requests. So maybe we just like we did with the group as a concept, we can create something that it's the concept of bulk operations or something, which can allow you to create empty volumes, volume from image, that sort of thing. And we can start small, like you say, Brian, just vanilla, and for this one. But I think that's more work than the logs.
It is a boatload of work. That's a lot of work. And I'm trying to think, how does that affect all of the internal operations that Cinder uses to actually create clones as well? So
did anyone think about about not locking at all? Like, what happens? Okay, so a delete will destroy the.
You can break Cinder. Cinder
Really?
can be frozen, and you need to reboot your system. That is the worst result that can happen from not having this lock. And we have customer cases complaining about this, but at least in those cases, they are weird situations. So it's kind of like the perfect storm happened and Cinder just froze because somebody deleted manually in the backend or this happened. So we always say, well, don't do it. But in this case, if there is the possibility that a normal user error, not an admin, can break your cloud, that is bad. So that is the worst case, why we don't allow you to just do it.
Just to clarify, adding a read-write lock to the volume object is just too complicated. Like we would have to synchronize that through twos, and it would just be a boatload of work and make this be just a massive effort. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, that's why I'm proposing this other alternative means of boatload of work. So
I just want to understand, like, before we start talking about alternatives, I'm wondering, like, why. I just want to understand why the obvious one is.
I can give you the reason. I think is that, for example, if you go to tools to the developers and say, "Hey, I want to do this feature," they will probably tell you, "Okay, I want it in more than one driver." You cannot just go and say, "Oh, I'll add it to the etcd driver." And if for example, Walter said, "Oh, in my deployment we do it with etcd," maybe I go and I say, "Wait, Red Hat is no longer going to use etcd. Please add it to some other driver." And now you have to add the feature to two drivers, and then somebody else come and say, "Oh, wait, another one." So we either add it to a single driver, for example, the database driver, and just use that specific DLM. That could be a solution. We narrow the scope to this is not configurable because we always have a database. We know the database is there. we use the tools database driver and we do the locking with it, or we directly implementing the read-write using the database, maybe, and that limits the scope so that it's not such a huge work. But otherwise, it is a lot of work if you want to go the tools route and add it as a feature in there.
And we're certain that TOOS doesn't have such a primitive or construct in its existing implementation.
I think
I did a
not.
quick look and I didn't see it, but I could be wrong.
I'm
hope I am.
not intimately familiar with the problem, but it would seem that a read-write lock in the volume object would be possibly useful for possibly other operations. Instead of setting the status field, maybe we could, I don't know, but if it's a massive amount of work, I'm just trying to understand the scope and the nature of the problem.
Well, it'd be nice
The
to
massive
have
amount-
something in. Go ahead, Gorka.
No, I was just going to say the massive part is that there are like 12 drivers, and each deployment tool may be using a different one for the DLM in active. And then we would also be adding as a permanent requirement to have the DLM configured to something different than the file, which is a requirement we currently don't have. And sorry, Alan. Go ahead.
No. That's actually reasons why. I mean, it'd be great to say, hey, let's add this to TOOS. Now everybody can benefit from it. Well, that kind of means then everybody can suffer the same pain. You have to use this TOOS driver, or you have to implement it in every TOOS driver. Can we implement it within Cinder? We've got a very narrow use case. Let's implement it in Cinder. If somebody else can generalize it later and contribute it to TOOS, great. But I don't think that should block us from doing something within just Cinder now. Other thoughts while I have the microphone. If we can do something within Cinder, then I would offer that the whole problem can be viewed as a bug, and we now have a bug fix that can be backported, as opposed to these bulk volume operation things, which are clearly a feature that's not going to help Walt out in the short term.
I think what you said may be a good idea. We can take inspiration in the MySQL TOOS driver for the lock. Just rip that out and see how we can add to that specific method in our code. That way, there is no driver to configure. There is, by the user, no additional dependencies on services. And like you say, this is a bug fix. Or if it's not considered a bug fix, at least it's something so constrained in that doesn't have microservices, no new RPCs, nothing that distributions can actually backport it without too much pain.
Yes,
exactly.
I wonder
So
whether
that
we're
sounds-
not something like this. You'd think they'd come across this kind of situation. So I wonder if there's something in there where they smuggled.
Nope. No. And to be honest, no, there is a recording, so I will not state my opinion on some of the lock implementations in TOOS. But yeah, I think that would probably be the best solution, unfortunately, which is in what you were trying to avoid, Walter. Implement a locking with in this case, with the database. But that is going to be the least amount of code, to be honest. And if it's within Cinder, at least you know that you will get reviews and you will get, like, we care about what you're doing here.
Right. Yeah. So I kind of agree with this as well, is because, we're still stuck on Wallaby currently. So having something that's a bug fix that we can backport is ideal for me, because I have to implement this in Wallaby and anyway. So the real question is how do we implement this the right way? I'm not sure exactly what that is. I would like to avoid adding a new database column to the volumes table. if we're going to add some sort of locking in there that's different from the status field, then why it? I'm struggling to come up with the right way to do this without being a hack of some sort.
I could look into how tooth driver, the MySQL locking is done, because I don't know how they are doing the locking, if they're leveraging the logs in the database or what they're using, and see if something similar can be adapted to the read-write situation.
Okay, and well, if it's going to be done in the database in sort of a lock, then that has to work across MySQL, Postgres,
Nope.
right? Or SQL Alchemy, or no?
Nope, because a long time ago, please anybody correct me if I'm mistaken, it was said that we would no longer actively support Postgres. So the only database we care about is MySQL and SQLite for testing.
Okay.
For unit tests. So if it can be done for both, for Postgres and MySQL, great. If it's additional work, then MySQL is the only constraint I think we currently have. I don't like it, but it's how it is.
Yeah. We use MySQL, or MariaDB, so that's fine. All right. Well, I guess I'll wait to hear back from you and see if you find a mechanism to use for this, and then if not, then the alternative is to go at the status field, possibly of the source volume.
Not loving it.
Yeah, I don't love it either, but that's unfortunately it's very similar to how we do everything else for locking operations, to preventing operations from being taken on.
But we only allow one operation when we use that kind of lock. It is not multiple doing one operation and only the other. You know what I mean? And also, it presents a big problem because, as I mentioned before, we have operations that internally do cloning without the user knowing, or without us wanting them to know that we're doing things, or a snapshot, that sort of thing. And it would be problematic. We would also have to take into account that for backups, we may be creating a snapshot or a volume, so changing the status would suddenly we start having a whole tree of decisions into, do I need to change it for this case or not?
Right.
And in the past, every time we've done this kind of decision trees, and because they are so spread in the code, we've introduced bugs. And
yeah. No, I get it. That's why I looked into that, and I thought, well, this is going to be a nightmare to manage correctly. Just like reference counting is, it's a nightmare to manage correctly and to make sure that it's throughout the whole code base. And anyway, I'm not sure how else to do it. I mean, unless we add, I don't know. I'm open to suggestions.
One thing I would really like to have from this locking is some sort of okay, let me say it this way. It would be great if it has a list of entities available to administrator, which are backtraceable, like has a worker name and a PID or something like that. So you can backtrack which are stale or not, and then manually resolve it. So that's why, like, packing it into status, unlike just a counter. I think just a counter only works in absence of crashes or bugs or something like this. I would really prefer to have a list if you work on this log. Like in most logs in like CPU, you don't care, or you maybe do, but like kernel has all control, and if anything crashes in it, like the whole system goes down. In this case, we absolutely have many issues when administrators or operators look into database and then they take this risk that they screw up, but they like have no exit. They would really like to tinker with Cinder's internals. Some of those aspirators are actually developers or know what they're doing, or like Dave Hill is one. Rajat also does that very successfully. Without like destroying Cinder, customer Cinder, he can go in and look at it. So I know of these examples, and that's why I would really prefer the local implementation keep like audit trail of those. As long as it's not computationally prohibitive.
That would
You know
mean
what
that
I
we
mean.
would have to store the, like you say, the PID
So
or the request ID or whatever. Also the host where it is being done. Also
Yes.
the resource, that the source and destination resources.
No,
Now we have
that's the source. Like forget the yes, that's how you identify the operation. That one. Okay.
exactly, because you are cloning from one to a specific volume.
I
or
was
whatever.
hoping for just ID of the like
Yeah.
process or worker. Although in our case it can be container. Well,
Yeah,
anyway, if you could consider
that would
would be great.
require using the workers table, and the workers table is
Yeah, I was thinking like, okay, Walt is talking that workers are hanging around. I was thinking like, why is he allowing this? Just like freaking clear it. Because you know which one is which. But
Yeah.
but that was not for me to like. I don't have a big cluster to run.
Well, our deployment is
Anyway,
very
so-
large, and we do not use active-active at all. We have multiple API pods running, but only one Cinder volume service running to manage a particular backend.
All right. Well, anyway, I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to say because I'm not writing it.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we wait for Gorka to do his research on the database-based lock, and then if that doesn't work out, then we have to hash this out again, I guess. Some other mechanism.
I did look at twos and their existing database lock, and there's really no joy there to easily turn it into a counting lock. It uses a MySQL get lock feature where you can just sort of like create arbitrary locks with a given name, but there's no mechanism to provide a reference count that I could find.
But if there's a way to provide a read lock instead of a write lock, or to distinguish between those two, is what we really need. Because it's okay to have a lock on it, but the next request that comes in, I'm only going to read. Well, you get the lock. Go ahead and do your stuff, but you can't change anything to it. You know, I think that's.
Yeah, the question
That would
is
be
though,
ideal.
who's responsible for releasing the read lock?
Well,
You know,
the
last-
entity that does the operation that requested it, right? You requested it, you release it. That's why I wanted that list in case you die in the middle.
Yeah. And in our case, we would have multiple read locks going on actively.
Yeah, I was trying to invent some sort of
Yeah.
fake volume that you can lock, and it has this property, but then substitutes the data. But I don't understand Cinder enough to see if it's viable. The advantage of that is that all the rest of the code continues working normally, that never have any issue, changes or anything. But
Yeah, I think that's why we're looking at a lock change and not having to put some mechanisms throughout all of Cinder to manage this correctly. I don't really see how to do that and not have a ton of bugs introduced at the same time. All right, that's all I have. I mean, unless anybody else has another approach or ideas how to manage this, I'm still at a loss at this point currently. Now, one of the ideas that I did have is just removing the lock. But as you said, you know, if that can wedge Cinder, then that's not an option. All right, well, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Will. So we've got an action item on Gorka on this one. What's the conclusion? Like, where are we leaving this?
I wasn't sure that Gorka had volunteered. I thought he was just suggesting, here's some things to look at. So
He didn't. That's kind of why I'm asking, because I'm not sure.
What I don't know if people who are interested, me included, can spend a bit of time like having a look and see if there is a way. Right now I cannot come up with a way of using the get block is free lock, the MySQL constructs that use the metadata to the MySQL metadata, sorry, to do the locking. But maybe we can try to brainstorm each of the people interested in this, and then in one of the IRC meetings or something, discuss what if we have come up with a solution for this. I will spend a bit of time, but I don't know how much time or how much, if I will have success. Let's put it that way. If this was something that Red had told me to, like, hey, Gorka, fix this, it's your problem, then I would have to spend more, as long as I needed to figure it out. But since right now it doesn't seem like it's a problem for our customers, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm saying that it doesn't look that way.
They haven't raised it yet.
Exactly. Or if they have raised, it hasn't reached engineering years. So I cannot spend that a lot of time, or at least not as much time as necessary. Let's put it that way. So I will spend a bit of time because it's interesting. I already looked at it in the past conceptually. So
Yeah.
I'm interested in getting it fixed, but a bit painful.
Yeah, it is painful. Well, just give me a list of your customers and I'll start making phone calls.
All right. So I don't know. Maybe Walter, at least I know you're interested. I'm interested. If there's somebody else interested, we can have like a couple of weeks of investigation or 1 week, and then reconvene in the RSC meeting and see if we've made any progress.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, what may help is we've kind of narrowed it down that we want to concentrate on MySQL MariaDB. We want to read write lock. So there may be something out there that somebody's done as a proof of concept or something.
Exactly.
That will do this.
Yeah.
So now that we've narrowed it down a bit, some Googling might help.
Yep, exactly. And if we cannot find anything that way, we can go ourselves, we can go back and try to figure out alternative solutions. But yeah, definitely if it's something we already have, which currently it's mostly the database, that's RabbitMQ and the database. Those are the only two things we can be sure that are there. Anything else, like memcache, may or may not be there. It's a DLM may or may not be there, depending. Since it's tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, another alternative is if we are able to make it happen with existing tools features, like a couple of them using them in a specific way, that could also work, as long as it works with the active passive mechanism, which is file logs, then it would be fine. Because when you do active, you would also have the DLM in active.
Mhm.
So if you have the constructs and we find a way to use those, then it should be fine as well. But yeah, I would focus at the beginning definitely on looking at MySQL, what is there, how we can use it.
Okay,
That's
I'll
what
try going down that road too.
But my initials look at the get log in MySQL, it's like Alan said, not looking great.
Is there another Cinder table we can leverage to actually store the reference count in our database?
Maybe.
I don't know enough about the various Cinder tables. I'm sensitive to Walt's comment about let's not just add a row to the volume table, but
Well, yeah, it would be easier to add a new table than it would be to update the volume, add a new column to the volume table, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So maybe if we don't find a way of using existing constructs from MySQL or tools, we can look at what if we add a new table? How would we handle it for these logs? Yep.
Yeah. That also opens up another can of worms too. Because
Well-
if the scope of this table is just for this issue, then that's one thing. But if we're going to make it generic for other purposes, I don't know.
I would say it should be for read-write logs. That would be the generic thing for it.
Okay.
Yep.
That I wouldn't abstract higher than that. It's like, this is our login when we need a read and write log. That's it.
a tiny table just for this purpose, and not have it become a dumping ground for random database objects.
This is where we're tracking all of our processes that were ongoing in Cinder kind of stuff. Yeah, that my mind immediately went there. I'm like, no.
No, better just read write logs.
Yeah.
If we need it.
Yeah, if we need to go that route. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for the discussion. I appreciate it. I've got to run here shortly to a team meeting for work, so I might have to drop off here in a few minutes.
Next on the list is bring your own encryption keys from Tobias. Tobias, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfectly. Thank you. Some months ago, I joined a discussion with you already about this topic, and we came to the conclusion that the changes are rather small, but needs to be brought up today, or at least this week in the PTG, because API changes are required, and yeah, we should most likely further discuss it first a bit about the implications the change has. Okay. Yeah, basically, let me have a look. Basically, I did some small changes to the Cinder spec It's getting a bit loud here. So now it should be okay again. I wrote a small spec about what needs to be changed, what is the problem first, some use cases, and the proposed change in the OpenDev review. Yeah, but it doesn't show up at the official page of OpenStack. So if I remember correctly, some of the questions were that there are some other encryption, like ephemeral encryption, and also there's an intention to do some key recreation. And there are some special cases that needs to be looked at when doing this change. And as I'm rather new at the OpenStack development at all, I'm open for any hints how to proceed and how to bring this feature to OpenStack.
So there was a little bit of a discussion, well, a little bit. There's a big discussion yesterday about encryption. And I think the consensus is that, so this will be good for you. The consensus is that what we want to support is just LUKS containers being passed around. Because there was a proposal to use GPG as a way to encrypt stuff. But instead, what we've decided to support across Nova, Glance, and Cinder would just be storing LUKS containers. So that's good. Then in terms of the key, what Cinder prefers is that you just tell Barbican to make you a key. But there's some discussion over whether we should allow arbitrary passphrases. Because the way Cinder handles stuff now is we just tell Barbican to create a secret, which is just a random spread of bits. And then what we do to actually create the passphrase that's used in LUKS is that we take the bit stream, convert it to a hexadecimal representation, and use that set of characters as the passphrase. So the implications are just part of what's said here is that a user should be able to hold on to the key and then they can encrypt stuff offline. So that's true to an extent, depending on how you use it. Unless this other thing is implemented where we allow the alternative scheme to do passphrases.
Right. The idea was to reuse the Barbican key manager anyway, so that there's a two-step process. And if you want to bring in your own keys, first that you have to create a new key in Barbican, and then tell Cinder while creating a volume to use already known ID instead of requesting Barbican to just create a new one. And so that would mean that we only need to support one new attribute at the API create endpoint. And with that, the code could already work as it is.
So
yeah, Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Let me quickly join this discussion to pick up what Brian was hinting at. So there's a really important distinction to be made here that is not clearly obvious to the user.
If you do it like you proposed, Tobias, it would be like Cinder would use this key, but it wouldn't use this key as is, as the passphrase. It would transform it using an operation, as Brian said, to turn it into a different representation, regardless of what the user pushed into Barbican, if this is a bit stream or if it is if this already are characters like ASCII UTF-8. And so the important thing here to note is that the user cannot expect if they ever were to download an image snapshot of the volume that they would be able to use the key that they initially brought into Barbican to unlock the volume themselves offline, because they would need to mimic the transformation that Cinder internally does on the key, which is non-obvious to the user. It is possible. You can simply use a suitable Python function for it, but the user needs to know about this. So it is at least a documentation issue. But we could also talk about what we proposed yesterday, that we support the different kind of secret type in Barbican to be used. Currently, if Cinder creates a Barbican key for volume, it uses the secret type called symmetric. And yesterday we proposed that Cinder also would support a secret type called passphrase, which would then lead Cinder to skip the transformation. And I guess that would really go hand in hand with your bring your own key suggestion really well, so that users could register the secret as the type passphrase in Barbican, and Cinder would skip the transformation altogether, so that users can expect the passphrase to be used as is in Cinder as well. I don't think this is a huge challenge, but I just wanted to clarify and also emphasize what Brian was hinting at, also in regards to yesterday's discussion.
Okay, thank you. Yes, as I mentioned, I'm relatively new to the OpenStack development at all, so yeah, I'm not sure how to continue at all. The spec is written, it's a bit older already, and there are some initial ideas how to turn it into active code that would work. But of course, these new information and also other projects going on, maybe also for the new release, well, are not part of this basic view of the feature request at all. So basically, what would be the next step? What needs to be done next if this can be added to the next release somehow?
So we'll need to get the spec reviewed and approved. I'm thinking, I don't know how to. So after yesterday's discussion, I mean, I'm starting to think that if we do allow users to bring their own keys, we're going to have to allow the passphrase type, because otherwise it gets kind of complicated to use this. So that will be a change, because as Marcus was saying, right, if you just supply something that you think is a sequence of characters and slap it into Barbican, that's not how we use it. And so if you downloaded the thing and then tried to decrypt it, you'd be out of luck. So we want to avoid that situation. We could address it in documentation and just say, this is what you have to do. But that's something we'd argue about on the spec. But I'm starting to think we should probably support both. I'm against supporting only passphrase, because I think it's more secure to do it the way we're doing it now, where we're taking advantage of Barbican's ability to give us truly random stuff, or as close as possible. Yeah, Marcus.
I think we could cleanly separate this. Maybe we should start with the proposal that Tobias is currently writing to support the secret type symmetric, so that the first contribution from his side would be to enable the new API endpoint and to be able to inject a key that is then handled as Cinder currently handles all other keys. And in the course of the contribution from our side, so Josephine and I, we would be adding support for the secret type called symmetric, passphrase, and things would simply combine together. So if Tobias implements the API endpoint and we offer the compatibility to the passphrase type, then it goes hand in hand, because he enables the secret ID to be passed, and we would offer the new type of secret to be actually handled. I guess that could go hand in hand, and he wouldn't need to have any concerns about the secret type. For now,
the internal working of Cinder, like if it's encrypting it somehow or not, because for the end user, at this point, it only matters that he has an encryption ID already from the API, and he wants to push it forward for the new volume. Whatever happens in the background.
Okay, that seems to make sense. So we'll talk a little bit about, so the scope for your change, Tobias, is just, right, you'll change the API so that someone can specify Barbican U ID of a secret, and then we'll consume it. And then we can talk offline about how you would document this for your users. But in the meantime, depending on how quickly Marcus and Josephine work and how quickly we review, you might not have to do that second step because it might already be handled. Okay, so were you asking in terms of what to do next? It would be just read over your spec one more time and then show up at the weekly meetings to see if anyone's reviewed it yet. But I think it's relatively small, so I think it should be easy. And then there's probably some API examples. I'm assuming you know about our contributors page that has links to all the stuff for when you want to contribute. I'll put another link in the Etherpad. There's probably been a change, I'll have to think, to one of our API calls that has done something similar to allow an additional field. So there's probably an example you can use in terms of coding this up and making sure you got the right tests and things. But the first step is get the spec approved and then do the coding.
Okay, got it.
so one thing I'd like to have your opinion on in this regard is how we should handle secret types for now. In the current state, Cinder only knows and handles secrets of the type symmetric, because it's only itself would create keys in Barbican. If we add this new API function, we could get IDs for arbitrary Barbican secrets. There are many other types aside from symmetric and passphrase, and there are bit lengths and modes and whatever. And on the other hand, Cinder has a volume type for the volumes that also specifies things like bit length, cipher, and so on. And I guess if you now enable users to specify secrets, they at least have to match with what Cinder expects for this volume type. So I think we should be careful about how we identify and also compute these secrets.
Yeah, in the past, we haven't had to worry because we've controlled everything. But you're right. So in addition to the volume type, there's an encryption type that specifies the key length and all that kind of stuff. First thing might be to, in the code, so I don't think we even check to see what type of secret is. We just assume it's symmetric and we go from, and it's the right length because we put it in there ourselves. And then we go from there. So the first thing we may need to check. So what we should be doing now is, well, we haven't had to do it because we put the stuff on there. But as soon as Tobias makes his change, there's no telling what we're going to be getting, right? So we need to have a check in there to reject non-symmetric keys that aren't the correct length. And I don't think we do anything like that. So we'll have to look at the volume type, the encryption type. Eric knows this better than I do, but something along those lines. But I don't think we use Castellan, I'm pretty sure, as the interface to Barbican to get information.
Yes.
But we have not checked any of the secret metadata because we haven't had to. I'll share the Etherpad because John's going. Yeah, so I think it's a good point, Marcus. So part of this is going to have to be verifying that the passphrase supplied by the user fits what we expect. And then we can gradually open that up to other types. And I think that the bit length, yeah. So anyway, so that'll be good because even if we allow passphrases, right, the encryption type sets how long it's got to be. And so if somebody gives us, 64 bytes and we expect, 64, we can't really use it. So we do need to have some kind of filtering here.
Just a quick correction on this one. This is actually pretty complicated or confusing at least because the bit length that is written into the volume type encryption does not actually relate to the Barbican secrets bit length specifically because the length there is about what Cinder instructs Lux to use for the
Passphrase.
user and master key slots stuff. So it's pretty complicated, and I don't have the full. I don't recall fully which is which, but not everything is applicable to the Barbican secrets. So it's pretty complicated.
Yeah, that's a good
But
point. I think
I just wanted to bring it up in case we have arbitrary Barbican secrets where we might not be able to use them as passphrases or whatever. But the volume type encryption might not be directly related to the format of the Barbican key, because that's only the passphrase, and the volume type encryption specification is rather related to the master or user key slots, the resulting keys in there. And the Barbican passphrase essentially only acts as a key encryption key, so to speak. So there's a distinction.
Yeah, we probably use a review of the documentation around this, because it's going to have to be clearer if we're going to let end users do stuff. Okay, any other thoughts about this? Okay, so Tobias, you sort of know what the next step is. And we've got the Cinder weekly meetings, so that's a good place to show up if you have questions or, issues.
Okay. Thanks.
Welcome. And there's the mailing list if the meeting time isn't good. Anyway, the main thing is this feature is your baby, so you're in charge of driving it. So I think there are no objections, but you have to take charge to make it happen.
Got it.
Okay, cool. All right. All right. So all right. Question. All right. So here's we don't have a lot of stuff for tomorrow. John suggested that maybe the SnapLock worm support for NetApp could be discussed today. Sarvan on here. assuming that, the person who wants to discuss it is ready. Yeah.
Hi,
So
hi, Brian.
I'm not sure how to
Yes.
say your name, so I apologize.
Yeah,
in advance.
Sai is fine.
Okay.
Sai.
Okay.
Hi, Brian. Actually, Saravanan told he will drop a message to John that we will be removing this topic, and because we have investigated that the support is not there, that's what we found out today. So Saravanan dropped off for another meeting, and
Oh,
if
okay.
the topic, yeah, the topic comes up, I wanted to inform you. We only changed it to tomorrow, but we can remove the topic. We can strike it off because the support is not there. There is no support for this.
Okay.
Yeah, we will not be doing this feature.
Okay.
That's what Saravanan conveyed me on the chat.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So I put a topic on for tomorrow. John's got to be here for this, but it's basically what I want was Rajat and I to just sort of go through the development cycle, because I noticed on the documentation, some of it's out of date. There's some things that have changed. I just want to make sure our new PTL is aware of everything that happens. I think this would be also interesting to other people on the team, maybe not like people who've been around forever and know all this stuff, but just to see what the processes are and what we have to do to maintain stuff. But that would be tomorrow, because without John being there, it's kind of pointless. All right. So what I'm thinking is for today, we could like adjourn early and everybody go work on their documentation assignments from the the driver interface that we're working on. The driver interface documentation effort. I guess, yeah, go ahead, Rajat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was taking a look at that and I was just assigned the image one, so I can maybe take another one, like the create one. Yeah, that's that.
But yeah, it would be good to get a good start on those, so that right, Pete suggested that we do a follow-up at I think the next Cinder weekly meeting as a status check, and that we can get reviews started.
Well, I was too lazy and wanted 2 weeks instead of 1.
I know, I sort of compressed it.
Everyone said like, yes, next meeting. I'm like, okay.
Well, what I'm thinking is next meeting will be like a good reminder, and maybe there will be some stuff to review, but we're really aiming, right? Because once you sit down and start writing this, it may get a little bit more complicated than you think at first. But yeah. All right. So, does anyone have any general issues they want to discuss while we're all here? I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording because I think the main business of today is completed, and then we can discuss informally, because that may not being recorded may make for better discussion. I need to turn it off somehow.